Let's talk with Connor O'Gara about that. National columnist from Saturday Down South, good friend of the program. Connor, how are you doing today?
Gentlemen, doing well. I think it got below freezing in Orlando last night. So had to put the sheets on the trees, the plants and whatnot, because believe it or not, we are not built for that down here.
Neither are citrus trees, and you obviously must live right next to a giant orange tree or something like that. So did you cover your orange groves too?
We got a lime tree that we just bought like 3 months ago, and we got an avocado tree as well in our backyard. So we're trying to keep them in the best possible shape. You know, it's the off season for college football, but we can't afford to take a step back and not treat our trees with the utmost care and respect.
True. That's very well said. So the Razorbacks are killing the transfer portal right now, man. I mean, we already knew they were doing well by bringing in, Landon Jackson, Jaden Hasselwood. Now you're getting, and the cornerback from LSU's name is eluding me, but I know, you got Dwight McLaughlin, I think is his name, and then now Latavius Brini has chosen Arkansas. This is a guy who wins the national championship and then comes to play for Arkansas. Of course, there's Drew Sanders, too, from Alabama. I don't know any other team right now that's doing any better than Arkansas is in the portal. Do you?
Yeah, maybe LSU would be the one that comes to mind. I think Brian Kelly's done really well, and specifically even with Arkansas players, Greg Brooks, of course, Joe Fouché, but yeah, I mean, you can't necessarily say that Arkansas has taken a back seat with the portal, and some other programs definitely are. I mean, I think, what do they have? They're ranked in 247 Sports. They're fourth right now in terms of the FB transfer, the transfer rankings that they have, and that's a part of the game now. And when you have these intra-conference transfers available, you have to be able to take advantage of that. And that's the change that's kind of gone overlooked in the last year or so. Everybody's talking about, undergrads and NIL, and undergrads can transfer and not have to worry about sitting out a year. How's it going to benefit with NIL? And the thing that I kind of look at is, well, now you're seeing all these guys, and Brini being one of them. You're seeing these guys who are now transferring within the league, and that kind of creates a new set of circumstances, and it's a good sell for Sam Pittman to be able to make. And I think that's going to continue to be a big part of how they're going to build the roster, and it should be, because if you can get established SEC talent, then you'd be stupid not to.
I mean, there's a point to make here about just the league in and of itself. I know Matt Hayes wrote about it on Saturday Down South, but, team players, coaches, they want in this league when it is obvious that, well, I mean, in an obvious way to put it, I mean, national champions come from the SEC. They are not coming from other programs or from other conferences right now. So is it that simple why the SEC is kind of getting the best transfers in the country? Not just interconference transfers, but from the outside too.
Yeah, I mean, that has to be a big part of it. And the NFL draft streak, which will probably continue this year as well, that also coincided with the SEC starting this run of dominance that we've seen the last 15 years. I mean, yeah, if you were a transfer, if you were a head coach and you wanted to be able to say, all right, I need to be able to prove myself against the best possible competition, of course, you'd come to the SEC. If you were a head coach and you wanted to be able to figure out like what your next move is going to be, you would come to the conference that gives the most buyout money, and that is the SEC as well. So it's a net positive all the way around, and it kind of came up with the Kendall Briles thing, of course, where, I'm sure you guys have talked about that a good amount, but, people are kind of wondering, all right, would he go to a place like Miami? And I continue to say, look, Sam Pittman is right now in such a favorable position to be able to retain top assistants because of the power that he gives them. He doesn't micromanage, and he has an athletic director who will continue to pay up to be able to keep these top assistants. And that makes it a lot more likely that these guys are going to stay. And sure enough, that's what we're seeing play out with Kendall Briles. We saw play out with Barry Odom. And you want to be able to stay in this league. You want to be able to stay in this conference as much as everybody talks about the gauntlet that is the SEC West. There's still obviously something really attractive about coming to this league and being able to have success.
Yeah, Connor, and team that ultimately had the ultimate amount of success is Georgia's. They are defending national champions, since they just won it a few weeks ago. And I was reading your stuff on Saturday Down South, and you talking about how it's okay to have mixed feelings about the quarterback situation at Georgia. And I kind of want to give you a chance to kind of explain your take on it. But for most people, I guess, outside of Georgia, you just look at what Stetson Bennett has done just on paper is incredible. I mean, forget the former walk-on story. The guy just knows how to win, and he's won. So why do you think it's okay for there to be that kind of mixed feelings about it around the Georgia program?
Well, think about this. If you just found out that Georgia has had 3 different 5-star quarterbacks leave the program after spending 1 to 2 years there, that has all happened in the last 4 years. If you had just heard that nugget, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And oh, by the way, 2 of those guys were drafted at least in the first 4 rounds, Jacob East and Justin Fields. Georgia hasn't had a quarterback drafted in the first 4 rounds since Matthew Stafford in 2009. All right, this is a Georgia offense that hasn't had a top 40 passing offense since Aaron Murray left. And his last year at Georgia was 2013. So you're essentially saying in the entire playoff era, you've had all of that 5-star quarterback talent, and you've yet to have a top 40 passing offense in that stretch. So it's okay to feel a little bit conflicted. And Georgia fans had to hear all about Justin Fields having so much success 2 years at Ohio State, and, of course, drafted by my Chicago Bears in the first round. And you have to just every time you watch that, you're going to have that uneasy feeling. There's a very real scenario in which JT Daniels goes off and has a lot of success next year, plays for a team that's competing for maybe at least a conference championship at the Power 5 level, and then he's an early round draft pick in the NFL. And you have to just kind of accept the fact that this is the path that Kirby Smart has decided, that he doesn't really care about what your next level potential is. He's about winning games. He wants to be able to have a guy who he can trust that's not going to turn over the football. Stetson Bennett was that this past year, and he's who he ultimately trusted in those big-time spots. And so it's okay to feel frustrated that it's like, man, we get all this talent in the door. We get more 5-star quarterback talent than anybody in the country. And still, we don't necessarily have that to show for it. These guys have been billed as the saviors. So I understand why there are mixed feelings. Now, if you're sitting here today saying Stetson Bennett, I can't believe he came back and it's going to be a disaster. Like, all right, the guy finished 4th in the country in quarterback rating and just won a national championship, the first one at Georgia in 41 years. Let's take a chill pill on that. But I understand why there's at least some sort of angst when you see the talent that's leading the program.
And when you talk about the program and the 5 stars, and, of course, we all pay attention and get googly eyes over the guys with the most stars by their names. While it's good for, recruiting as far as what you do at the next level, it's not technically Kirby Smart's job to put as many players in the NFL as possible. His job is to win football games right now. So, I mean, as a fan base, you look at, another SEC team, different sport. Kirby Smart has the same amount of national championships as John Calipari does. And we all consider John Calipari a top 5 coach in college basketball right now and has put more players in the NBA than most programs have in their history, but he still has only won 1. Shouldn't winning be the ultimate factor when it comes to how fans view it? I mean, personally, I'd much rather have 0 NFL players and multiple championships if that's the way it was able to work out.
Exactly, and that's kind of the point that I think at least some Georgia fans have realized. Now, if Stetson Bennett had not won a national championship this past year, and if we found out that Kirby Smart was going to go with Stetson Bennett as his starter and JT Daniels is walking out the door, it's a totally different discussion. We're sitting here wondering if Kirby is ever going to get this right, and we're wondering why in the world he was so loyal to Stetson Bennett when we saw in the first 2 times against Alabama that it didn't work out. It's a different conversation to talk about being able to have NFL talent. And obviously that's part of it. That's a big part of it. And these kids care about that, especially in the NIL era, the transfer portal era, where that's easier than ever. You better be getting kids to the NFL, because if you're not, it's going to come back to bite you, and you're not going to be able to have that talent to compete for a national championship. Now, you're right, though. Like, it's more about winning championships. And Georgia fans, if you told them, hey, you're not going to have a single player drafted, but you're going to win a national championship, 100% of them would have taken that. So that's all that really matters in the end game with what Kirby's trying to do right now.
there's an identity. You know, I know teams want to have identities and be good at the things that they focus on being good at, you know, and Georgia has an identity. And I guess part of that identity has been we haven't developed big time quarterbacks. But at the same time, man, I mean, East Division championships, SEC championships, and now a national championship at the same time. I don't know why you'd want to change much at all, because it seems to be working. You know, even with a guy that was a walk-on, you just won a national title. With a guy that doesn't necessarily have, like, world-beating talent, he finished 4th in passing efficiency, just like you said. I don't know why Georgia would want to change anything.
Well, if you looked around, that's the issue. If you're a Georgia fan and if you didn't win a national championship this year, you would look around and you'd be like, man, I've seen Trevor Lawrence, I've seen Deshaun Watson, Bryce Young, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, Joe Burrow, these guys who are clearly elite NFL prospects. All of those guys picked in the first 15 picks of the NFL draft. And meanwhile, we're out here starting a guy who maybe is going to have a cup of coffee on an NFL practice squad, and we're coming up short. Gee, I wonder why. It's probably at the game's most important position that we're not necessarily meeting the standard. And that would be a frustrating pill to have to swallow if you're a Georgia fan, knowing the landscape of the sport, knowing that this is just kind of the name of the game. But you look around now and you're like, hey, well, we did it our way, and that's all right. And now Stetson Bennett, we're going to be able to kind of rally around him again. And who knows, maybe Stetson Bennett's going to become the first guy since A.J. McCarron to repeat as a national champ.
Yeah, maybe he's got a shot at it. And I was also reading your article about Alabama should be the number one overall seed, number one ranking when the preseason AP poll comes out. And it's so shocking to go back and look at it. I know you had it the last 15 years. Alabama is the only preseason number one to have won a national championship, and that was in 2017. Two-parter here. One, how is that possible when we know everything about college football in July? We're all experts, and we know exactly how everything's going to play out. How has the AP voters only predicted the final ending one time? And two, how is that kind of not up there as far as, you know, sports curses go? How come it's not on the same level as, like, say, the Madden curse?
Yeah, it doesn't get talked about a lot. And I think it's because AP rankings in the preseason, in my opinion, you're not trying to predict who's going to win a national championship. You're trying to predict what that roster looks like opening day, and what the team has done previously is pretty much going to tell you that. And what have they done in the offseason? What have they done, obviously, in the previous year? But it is kind of baffling. And I think part of it is, look, like 18 to 22-year-old kids who have an 8-month offseason about hearing about it. They're the number one team in the country. They're the best team. And even 2005 USC, a team that we thought was just can't miss. Of course they're going to win a national championship again. Meanwhile, Texas is sitting there with a team just as talented, if not more talented, the entire time. They're just like, hey, we're getting overlooked. This is our time to shine, and we're going to be able to shine on the big stage. And then sure enough, they beat USC in a championship for the ages. But it is baffling to see that. And even Alabama hasn't figured out the exact right solution, because someone would argue that 2017, that team didn't even deserve to make it to the playoff in the first place, and they won via second and 26 in overtime. So, yeah, it's a wild thing to think about, and it's something to remember with this Alabama team. And if they get it done, in my opinion, that'll make it even more impressive that they were able to handle those expectations and get the job done.
Connor, we'll leave it there. Good luck thawing out your citrus trees whenever it warms up there down in the Sunshine State. Thank you.
BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile wagering to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE to get started. That's BLEAV. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.